Today on The Next, our guests are Matt Kingsley and Tobin Anderson. Matt is the associate head coach for the Yale men's basketball team, and he's played an integral role in the most successful stretch in the long history of the team over the last 10 seasons. They posted a 771 winning percentage, won 6 Ivy championships, 4 Ivy League tournament titles, and earned 5 NCAA tournament berths. Tobin, on the other hand, is currently a special assistant to the head coach at University of South Florida's men's basketball team, and he brings with him nearly 3 decades of experience as a head coach and assistant across all levels of college basketball. He spent a couple years, most recently, as head coach at Iona, which included an upset of number 1 seed Quinnipiac in the semifinals to reach the championship game. He also was head coach at Fairleigh Dickinson, where the number 16 seeded Knights had an unforgettable NCAA tournament run, including a first 4 win over Texas Southern and one of the biggest upsets in tournament history, a first-round victory over number 1 Purdue in 2023. Now, here's 2 guys that played the game and had great careers. They've been coaches at all levels of college basketball over the last several decades. They're also both dads of athletes, and I was psyched for this discussion to hear about their journeys in the sport, how their journeys were different than the players coming up today, what they've been seeing as coaches in terms of the types of players that make it through the ranks and play the game at the highest levels, and also just the state of youth sports and the good, the bad, the ugly, what the implications are for coaches, for programs, for families, for kids, and for these guys as fathers. It's a great discussion, and I hope you enjoy it. Matt, Tobin, welcome to the show.
What's up, Jay? Well on, Jason. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. This is going to be a difficult one for me to get through. I'm just going to put that out there. I went to school with you guys. We haven't caught up in a long time. So, podcast aside, I'm just really psyched to catch up with you guys. And also, it just happens that the areas that I'm thinking about around athlete development, and granted, I'm starting in hockey, and Tobin probably knows this, and that you definitely know how little of a basketball guy I am. But even though I'm starting in hockey, I think there's a lot of parallels just with athletes across sports. And I also just think it's useful, no matter what sport you're starting in, to understand best practices in state of the state and others, because there's learnings that can be brought across. So with that, just thank you guys for coming on the show, and maybe just some intros in terms of what you're up to currently and your paths in the sport in 30 seconds or less. No, just joking. Tobin, maybe go first.
Yeah, so I'm an assistant coach at University of South Florida. I was a head coach. I've been a head coach at Division III for 12 years at Clarkson and Hamilton and SCAC as well. And then Division II head coach St. Thomas Aquinas for 9 years, and then Division I at both FDU and Iona. So I've been a head coach at all 3 levels. So my background's a little bit crazy as far as I've gone from Division III non-scholarship to Division I highest level. And I'm an assistant. I've been an assistant at all levels too. So it's been quite a journey, and I think the journey's not done yet. I've got more to do, so I'm excited about the future. But it's been a good run, and since my Wesleyan days, and I always knew I wanted to coach. I didn't know how things would go. It's a crazy path, but it's been really good to me. So I'm happy to be where I'm at, but I'm excited about the future.
Matt.
Yeah, my background is very different from that. I've been at Yale for 20 years. This will be my 21st season. I've been the associate head coach here for the last 13 or 14. I'm not even sure. And it's been a great experience here. We built this program from, a middle of the pack Ivy team to we've won 8 of the last 10 championships. Been to the NCAA tournament a bunch of times, won games in the NCAA tournament. So it's been really cool. And my daughter is a freshman here at Yale, so it's all been worth it. Yeah, I've been in one place for the last 20 years.
Yeah, so your Yale career would be a college sophomore, or in hockey would be like a junior in high school. No.
Tigger didn't mention his first job though, which I'm surprised he didn't do it. His first job was we were working together at Clarkson. So my first assistant and his first job, we were together up at Clarkson building build the program up there. So that was we were together, was it 30 years ago, 25 years ago?
Yeah,
Crazy.
that's true. That was my first job. My second job out of college. My first job, I worked for a consulting company for 9 months, and I got laid off. And then Tobin got his first head coaching job, and asked if I would come up to Farts and be his assistant, which I did, and that was awesome. I learned a ton, and we had a great time up there. That was a lot of fun to think, especially to think back upon. And
best year in school history in the past. They hadn't been 525 years, which is nuts, right? For this college team had not been 525 years. We were 14 and 12. It was like we won the national championship. We were 500. We're like, yeah, this is great.
yeah.
So, I mean, I know both you guys have kids, and I also know that you guys both, of course, came up the development path as kids at one point. Might have been a few years ago, but playing the game at a pretty serious level. I'm just curious, especially sitting where you sit, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in terms of the development path for basketball players coming up? And then what are some positives with the state of the state there? And maybe what are some of the things that aren't so good about the evolved state of the game?
It's a loaded question, right? So I was actually thinking about this yesterday because I saw an interview. So I grew up in Iowa. I'm from the Midwest, small town, small area, right? And everybody played a lot of sports. Like we had guys playing, everybody played baseball. Because we had to have a team in Interstate 35 high school. Guys had to play baseball, had to play football, had to play basketball. One of my best friends went to Iowa and played basketball, was also an all-state football player, all-state baseball player, ran track and field. And now you see guys who just play one sport, guys and girls who just do one thing. That's all they do. If you're a basketball player, all you do is play basketball because you play summer, you play fall, you play during your season, and it's become so specialized in that regard. And I think there's a lot of value in playing other sports. I think there's a lot of value in a break, a mental break too. Like sometimes, obviously me and Matt recruited at a pretty high level in college and life. You see these guys and they're playing every weekend somewhere. They're flying to California, they're flying to Kansas City, they're playing in a tournament here or there. So I think they're just almost like, it's almost too much. Right? I think it's too much playing and not enough like development. And when I grew up where I was at, like most of my development as a player was by myself. I was in a gym by myself, on the outdoor court by myself, or I'd go play at a local college and play against other college players, other high school players. And we just do that kind of randomly. Now everything is so organized, and everybody's got a skill trainer, and everybody's got an organized tournament this weekend. Almost like too much of that going on. We're just like, it's more fun sometimes just to go to the gym by yourself or with a buddy and just play. So I think the specializations hurt kids a little bit. And I think the fact that there's less just random playing, less random just going to the gym and do that kind of thing. Now, the positive thing is there's a lot more access to things, right? There's a lot more access to, if you want to play, you can go play the tournament every weekend. When I played AAU back in Iowa, we had the AAU Nationals. We had one tournament. You go play one tournament, and if you got beat, you were done. And if you won, you would advance to something else. And now you could play someplace every weekend. And you go play in Pennsylvania, and go play in New York, go play in New Jersey, and it's crazy. So there's more access. There's more stuff on obviously on social media, on YouTube. You get any kind of drill. You want to get better. One of the best shooters I've ever been around is Matt Kingsley. Matt's an unbelievable shooter, right? And like, if you want to become a great shooter, you go on YouTube and find 50 shooting, how to get better, how to improve, he didn't have that kind of access when he was growing up. He had to either, a parent or a coach had to show him how to shoot. Now you can go get all that stuff off the internet. So there's more access to teaching, learning, drills, things like that in all sports and all aspects of life. But sometimes too much of that is not a good thing either. So that's just my thoughts.
What about you, Matt? I'm sure you've got thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, no, I agree with Tobin wholeheartedly. While kids are playing more so one sport than multiple sports, everybody has their trainers. They have their strength coach. They have their agility coach. They have, they're doing 3 sessions a day of that concentrated to that sport. Whether it's a weightlifting session and speed and conditioning session in the morning, and then they're shooting, and then they have their practice in the evening. So they're in the gym all the time. And there's a lot of stuff that's focused on them with social media. Like they'll get in the gym and then they'll be like aspiring cameramen or Instagram people just filming for free just to put their portfolio together. And then, you know, those Instagram people will get a name and then they'll offer to the kids in the gym, hey, I'll do this for you for $20. And so there's a whole business around putting these videos out there of kids, and the kids get obsessed with it. And they're looking at Twitter and Instagram all the time. And probably the biggest aspect of it that I don't know that it's negative, but maybe it's neutral, but it's just like all of this stuff has so much more parental involvement. Whereas like Tobin was talking about going to the park and playing, and you just figured things out, you know, and if you weren't good enough, you didn't play, there was no parent there. And then, you know, eventually there was 9 guys there and you were the 10th. So you got on the court and then you started to play more from that point. You made the 10th, you made 10th, you tend to play 5-on-5. But now there's so much parental involvement. And so whether it's like an open gym when the parents are mediating or just like parents as coaches, I don't think that's a good thing at a young age. And it's also not a good thing to be playing organized all the time, you know, playing in tournaments every week. And it's organized and there's eyes on you and there's coaches. Like you need to go out and play in pickup games where there's no pressure, there's no stakes. There's no real stakes, you know what I mean? It's like you can experiment, you can test the boundaries of what you can do and try to get better at those things without like the pressure of playing for the brackets or the championship of the weekend that you're in. And so I think a lot is lost, you know, with the organization of it and the parental involvement as well.
So that changing landscape, on the one hand, there's been changes in sport, right? There's more privatization, there's stuff like NIL. But then from a bigger picture standpoint, like when we grew up, it was more like free range kids. Like you just have a lot more downtime to go ride your bike wherever you want and play in the neighborhood. I don't know about you guys, but if my kids went to play in the neighborhood now, they'd be playing by themselves because there's no other kids around, right? Why? Because all the other kids are overscheduled doing all those things that you just said, right? And so it's a little bit like, you know, even if you want it, you know, you're longing for a yesteryear that doesn't exist anymore. So why do you think that is? And how much of that is sport specific versus kind of broader societal changes?
It's a great question, right? But you're right. I mean, I haven't even thought about that. Like in the neighborhood, you don't see, there's not people out there, not kids hanging around. They're not doing things like that anymore. You know, I mean, geez, I used to, when I was a kid, like, you know, we're starting to get our age a little bit too much, but it's like, you know, I just make a phone call and, hey, let's go to the gym. Let's go play. Let's go to like Matt's. Let's go to the park and we'll go play. If there's 2 of us there, we'll play 1-on-1. And if people show up, we'll play 5-on-5. Like you don't see that as much anymore. I think that's probably a societal thing, right? Everybody's got so much shit going on, right? It's like there's so many things going on. I mean, my family, I mean, we got my daughter's got dance, and then she's got the cheerleading, and then she's got, you know, tutoring, and then she's got this, all, you know, college prep stuff. And so there's a lot going on for all of them. And it's like Matt said, so scripted. It's not like just figuring stuff out for yourself. You know, I mean, I got up the morning when I was a kid and just did what the hell I wanted to do. You know, if you wanted to go to the park, you go to the park and play. You want to go shoot, you go shoot. I want to go, you know, I used to go fishing all the time. I want to go fishing. I'll just go out, ride my bike out to a lake and go fishing. Like, but you don't have, now it's like everything's organized almost too much, you know? And so I laugh because of and there's so many people involved, especially you get to like, you know, the higher levels of like, even high school, like everybody's got like a trainer and they've got their mentors and you know, somebody's trying to advise them on NIL stuff and things like, there's just so many people involved. And like, for me, when I picked a school, when I did things, it was me, it was my parents, and that was it, you know. Now my dad was my high school coach, so I had a little bit of you know, my coach was also my father, but like nowadays, you know, you go recruiting, you're talking to 10 different people about, you know, making decisions. Obviously, you know, at Yale, you get a little more where Matt's at, you get a little more guy. They're a little more centered on the education and on and that thing. But I just think there's so many people involved and how many people really care about your best interests, right? How many really care about what's important to you? So yeah, I think with the youth sport thing, it just becomes so too organized, almost too much stuff going on.
it's big business now. You see these big companies buying up these small organizations that run local tournaments. And now big companies are buying up all these small organizations, and they're running tournaments every weekend, from a standpoint that's like more professionalized. They have it down to a science. They're forming leagues, and it's become big business.
I've got another set of questions I'm tempted to dig into, but before I go there, I want to ask you guys, so you've talked about some of the negatives of how things are different. Are there any positives to it? And if so, what?
Yeah, there's positives. I don't know. I actually, I can't even say that this is necessarily positive, but there are some positives to it. So many kids are playing. Like when you look at basketball, there's so many kids playing basketball. And that's a great thing, right? It's a great sport. It's fun. But I think that puts a lot of pressure on the kids too. Like there's so much competition out there to play on certain teams, to get recruited. We just had our elite camp at Yale, and we had 135 kids on Saturday and 110 kids on Sunday, high school level kids that want to be recruited by Yale. We have all the high academic Division III coaches in the gym, and there's a lot of good players in the gym. A few for us to look at, a lot for Division III level schools to look at, a lot that can play somewhere in between Division II, Division I at some level. But there's a lot of good players that aren't going to get recruited. And when we played, I think good players got recruited. Now there's a lot of good players that don't get recruited. So again, like there's a positive to it that, a lot of kids are playing the sport, and it's a great sport, and it's fun, and they'll get a lot out of it. They'll learn life lessons, but there'll be some disappointment out there too.
Yeah, I think.
Tobin, any positives?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these kids are getting to do things that, we could never dream of doing. Like a lot of these tournaments sometimes are across the country. You're going to play in California, go play in Vegas, go play. I mean, we got guys going to Switzerland for this summer for 3 of our recruits going to Switzerland to play over a tournament over there. I mean, there's more going to do a lot of fun things. It's funny because like Wesley and I don't we didn't go any place for any tournaments. But one time we went down to Moravian to play in some tournament outside of Philadelphia in some awful tournament, and these guys are going to Hawaii, and they're going to all these, these incredible spots. And so, but then that takes a little bit of the fun of when they get to college and say, well, hey, we're going to the Bahamas. Well, we're going to play in the Battle for Atlantis this year, right? Well, half our team's already been to the Bahamas for something else, for another tournament or whatever. So they're not as excited about that as we would have been. So, but there's a lot more things you can do, a lot more, like I said, a lot more access. If you want to play all the time, you can play all the time. That part's good. And I think a little bit of when I was growing up, I wish we could have played more games. Well, now you can play as many games as you want to, but there's, and I do agree with what Matt said too. Like my son, he's a freshman, he's going to be a sophomore in college. He ended up being a really good runner, but he was a very average basketball player. He couldn't make the varsity basketball team at his high school, but he could still play AAU and still go play in tournaments and things like that. So I think no matter what your level is, there's some place where you can play. Now, part of that is everybody's making money, right? So an AAU tournament's going to have 160 teams come because they're all paying $500 to go play in some tournament. So they're happy to take your money and say, hey, go play in the C division or the D division or whatever. But it gives more opportunities for kids who are maybe not quite good enough to play in their high school teams a chance to go play. So there's more of that going on.
So here's the set of questions I wanted to ask you guys. So I'm hearing about too specialized, it's privatized, everyone's got their hand in your wallet, it leads to burnout, it leads to overuse injuries, it leads to too much sacrifice in other parts of your life. In the long term, it's better to have the variety and, more friendships, more experiences, everything else, right? But then who are the kids that end up rising to the radar of you guys from a recruiting standpoint? I bet, and tell me if I'm wrong, that it's the specialized kids who are doing all the things that you guys are advocating not to do. And so it's a little bit like, well, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? Like we can talk about how the system should be different, but the system is what it is. So if you actually want to play at a high level, these are the things you need to do, no?
I would argue that it's probably going to be the same kids regardless of whether the system changed. Yeah. Like basketball.
So nature. So it's like nature 95 and nurture 5.
Well, basketball and hockey players are big, strong kids too, right? So like a lot of it is about your physical attributes that, are God given, so to speak. So, and then you're going to, if you're in that position, you put some work into it, but you can play multiple sports and still get recruited by Yale. You know what I mean? Like, and we're going to recognize the talent, I think.
So if you look, and we'll get to your perspective in a minute, Tobin, but just so that I understand, if you look at the roster at Yale and other competitive programs at the Division I level, are the vast majority of those kids that had God-given talent? And so, yeah, I mean, they'll put in some work and stuff, but like, they're not going to outwork everyone else and make all the sacrifice and do all the things? Or is there a percentage, and if so, what percentage of kids that maybe weren't the ones with the God-given talent, but just like busted their ass in a sustained way over a long period of time?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a mixture of the two. But there's definitely the late bloomers that didn't put the time in, that you recognize the talent. And those are the guys you take a chance on, because for us, like, we're not the highest level. We're a high level, but we're not the highest level. And the highest level is gonna pass on certain guys that have a lot of talent or show ability, but they're not quite there yet. But if we recognize that ability, then we could tap into it and help them reach their potential.
Tobin.
Well, this is what I would say, right? The level we coach at, that I've coached at, Division I level, right? That's like 1% of all student athletes. We're talking about the top of the top. I worked my ass off to play Division III. Matt did too. I mean, we were really good players and we worked our tails off. So for the top 1%, you probably do need to be in the weight room. You probably do need to have a strength coach. You probably do need to have all that stuff helps. No, what you're saying, there's no doubt about it. Wait, I was talking to a guy who plays for us who's a great shooter. And I said, how'd you shoot the ball like that? He's like, I would get in the gym and shoot 500 shots a day, or 500 shots a session 3 times a day, 1,500 shots with a trainer. That extra work, he couldn't play baseball. He couldn't play football. He had to do the basketball stuff. So what you're saying is right. But we're talking about for the good of society, for the good of youth sports, we're talking about 1%. Most kids can't play Division I. Most student athletes can't play anywhere in college. It's hard to play Division III and Division III, Division II, Division I. You can play in college, you're a hell of a player. You've worked your tail off just to get to that level. So most high school student athletes aren't going to play in college. I used to always laugh when we have a camp. You have a youth camp at your camp, and kids come in, and I'd say one of these kids will play in college. The rest of them might be a good high school player, might be a good, maybe on the team in high school, might be a part of a middle school team or something like that. So it depends on what we're talking about, right? If we're talking about the top 1%, the specialization definitely helps you. Overall, for youth sports and things like that, is a benefit to playing. And you got to be realistic about where you can play at, right? I knew pretty early on I couldn't play at Louisville or Alabama or Kentucky, right? So if you can't play at that level, why not go play baseball and go do something else just to be able to have a great experience? So that's my thoughts.
A few things I want to press on there. One is, you hear this narrative, don't go to the Facebook message boards for your, the Massachusetts youth hockey page, or I'd imagine there's a similar one for basketball or whatever. It's a hornet's nest. But one of the things that you see on there is your kid is not going to the show, so they should just have fun. And that's that they're just saying that uniformly across the board, but some people make it, right? And so if the people that actually made the show had that mindset, then they never would have made the show, because they wouldn't have believed that it was possible, right? So that's one thread I want to pull on. And then the other one is, at least in hockey, and I don't know if the same thing's happening in basketball, but they're picking winners when they're 6 years old, right? In terms of these elite clubs that then lead to elite clubs at the next level, which lead to elite clubs at the next level, and that, right? And it's putting a bunch of frogs in a pot and turning up the flame, and knowing that most are going to fry, and seeing if one or two can top out. And I guess what you hear from parents who have kids been through the chute before, right, is oh, at this age, you don't even know what you've got, because everything changes. Puberty, dating, parties, checking, right? Checking something you hear about in hockey that changes the game. So you don't know what you've got, right? And so I guess reconcile those two things, the not, the So like if everyone assumed that it wasn't going to be them, then no one would make it kind of thing. And then the second part is, how do you know from the early stage that you're not going to play when everyone says the landscape gets flipped on its head once all those, once all that life happens anyways?
You don't. So you gotta work your tail off to be as good as you can be. Like I said, maybe you try to be a Division I player and end up being a Division III player. That's great too. We all play Division III, love Division III. So like, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's like that book, The Talent Code, right? Do you ever read The Talent Code? It's like the people who, when you're 6 years old, they put you on an elite team. Elite kids get the elite coaching, they get better competition. So the elite ones become even more elite. Like that point is well taken, right? And like, listen, life favors guys who are bigger, stronger, faster, quicker. You go watch a youth soccer game, you can see the best player probably in about 30 seconds who's going to be the best athlete. I went to watch soccer one time. My daughter was going to play, and there's a loose ball, and she's the last person to get. I'm like, well, she probably won't be a soccer player. I could tell in about a minute that she was not going to be elite. Yeah, I mean, all that stuff sorts itself out. It depends on your personality. Like to play in college, you're so driven. Like I wanted to play in the NBA. So I was driven, and like that was not realistic, but you couldn't have told me that. So I'm going to work my ass off to be as good as I can be. And like, even not making that level just to be able to play anywhere in college was pretty satisfying for me. So I think all that stuff works itself out. And like, to me, the parents should stay out of it. The parents are the ones sometimes who are pushing their kid. Hey, I want you to do this. I want you to be this. Let the kid decide what they want to do. Let them make their decisions based on what their goals and their motivations are. It's not for the parent to decide, or for some. We get a lot of that in basketball. A lot of hangers on saying, hey, you should do this, you should do that. Like let the kids make their own decisions. And so that's kind of been taken away as time's gone on.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point, your love for it and your commitment to it takes over. As I was saying before, like basketball is so athletic and size based that you're not always the one that's going to get to the next level because of your hard work. Because if you're 7 feet tall, you may not have worked that hard, but you're 7 feet tall and like you can run and jump. Or, you're just you're a great athlete. You got a 7 foot wingspan, you're 6'6" with a 7 point wingspan, and you're a great athlete. You know what I mean? You may not have worked that hard, but you have those gifts. But in order to continue to compete at that level and, reach the potential that, a coach saw in you, your love and your commitment has to take over, for sure.
That's what I would say too, Jason. Just like from my standpoint, I'm sure Matt would say, like, I play because I love to play. I love. Matt still plays. I can't play anymore. But we go to Final Four. Me and Matt, we go find a pickup game and play pick. We're 45 years old. So a lot of it's just if you love to play. Who cares what all the future and all that kind of stuff's going to be? Just go play because you love it.
Yeah, and I've always thought that having my sport like basketball for me, and for my son it's the same thing. For my daughter it was something different. But if you have that one thing that you can learn all these lessons from, you can learn how to work hard. You can learn how to rebound from failure and pick yourself up, when you're pushed down or you don't accomplish your goals. And you can learn how to work with other people towards a common goal. You learn all these lessons, but you need something that is that vehicle that you learn from it. And so like, that's what basketball or your sport can be for you, or for some people it's an instrument. For some people it's a subject feel. And, so I'm thankful for that I have that and that my son has that. And I think that's the goal for kids, is to find that something that they can learn life lessons from.
Well, if you I wrestle with this because you hear the stories of grown-ups who played the sport competitively. The level almost doesn't matter for this example, but at a high level somewhere, some sport, doesn't even matter the sport either. And they say, none of this came from my parents. My parents were working all the time anyways. I was so self-directed. I wanted from the youngest age. Like, they never pushed me, but they supported me, and they made sure I had access to all the resources. But all the motivation came from me. And then you hear about other parents or whatever, grown-ups, looking back on their journeys. And they say the opposite. They say, like, yeah, I was a screw up. I didn't have my stuff together. I would have gotten into this bad thing. I would have gotten into that bad thing. But I credit my parents with guiding me and keeping the train on the tracks and holding me accountable and setting a framework and pushing me every step of the way, because I never would have got to where I am without that pushing structure and direction. Which is right? Is there a one size fits all, or is it just like every kid is different, every family is different? Like, how do you know as a parent what that Goldilocks balance is for your kid, given all the contradictory narratives that are flying around?
It's just cliche. Like, if you care more, about it than your kid, then that's probably an issue. I look at it like to me, the right balance is like when you put guardrails up on a bowling alley. Like, you're just the ball can roll all over the bowling alley track. You're just putting those guardrails up to make sure it doesn't go off the track, off the bowling alley. So if you're making sure that your kid like bowls a strike every time, you're probably too much. You're just supposed to guide. You got to let them make mistakes. You got to let them fail and know what that feels like. And so I think it's a little bit more hands off.
That failure part is such a huge part of things too. Like, you have to fail. Like, I mean, my dad was my coach, right? So I had a little bit different situation. My dad, my high school coach, I was with him all the time. They're like, it was constantly like nothing was given to me at all. Like, it was always like, almost harder to be playing for your father, almost like more difficult, more demanding. He was almost harder on me than he was the rest of the team. But I see a lot of parents who are like, they give their kids, they'll make it easy for them and give them put them in perfect situations. And like, I think back to when I played for my dad, my dad, like, failure was a great thing for me in the long run. I learned how to, deal with all that kind of stuff and not be told that things were perfect and not be told things were great. So when I coached my son, me and Matt had this discussion. I think he was in the fourth grade. I coached his AAU team, and it was hard, really hard, because I was trying to kind of be like my father, but my son was not like me, and I was not like my father. So it was just, we kind of butted heads a little bit. I tried to like give him space or whatever. And the best thing he ever did was he started running cross country and started doing track and field. And I didn't know anything about that at all. I just go to the meets and watch the meets, and I had no advice. I didn't even know how it worked. And I just loved watching him run and just enjoyed watching him do his thing. And he kind of found his own path. But I think the basketball part helped us get to that point where it's like I learned how to kind of like, all right, just let him let him be himself. I can't push him. Let him figure out his own journey. And it made our relationship a hell of a lot better when he started doing more of that stuff. But it's hard. Like, I mean, I think you can't paint things with a broad brush and say, well, every parent's different, every kid's different. But I think when you see a bad situation, like, it, like we see it all the time. And you see a dad after a game, killing his kid, like, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. Like, let the kid figure that out, or you see a parents coaching from the sidelines. We see it in AU all the time. A kid will miss a shot and look over to his parent as opposed to look over to his coach. That's not a good situation. That's unhealthy. And so you kind of know it when you see it.
So back to your point before, Tobin, about the talent code, I also wrestle with that, right? Because on the one hand, it's like, let the kids be kids and figure this out and drive their own ship. But then to your point, Matt, like, it isn't the kid. It's the kid and the dad, right? And part of that is because everyone's doing all this, they got to this coach and then that coach and then this tournament and then that tournament. So like, when the kid is 8 years old or 12 years old or whatever, like, the kid's not driving, right? The kid isn't the keeper of their own schedule, right? The kid they're not paying, right? Like, there's a lot that comes into it. And these have real implications on like family budgets, family logistics, family planning, right? And so the parent has to be involved. It can't be like it was when we were growing up. So I guess my question is, and you touched on some of it, but just the kid is not going to know what tournament should I do and what should I sit out? Like, should I do multi-sport or should I do single sport? Like, which coaches should I work with for this set of things? Like, how much is overkill for my age, right? And so, like, at what point should the kid be fully self-directed? Like, when does that start, right? And then before the kid is capable of being fully self-directed, how do you navigate that as a parent, right? Because they need some direction, but you also want to make sure that, that you're not just living vicariously and chasing your own dreams when the kid is miserable. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think Matt, I've talked about this as well. Like, if your kid has a good coach, I think like youth coaches are so important. And I've seen bad youth coaches, I've seen good youth coaches. It's so much easier if your son or daughter has a youth coach who you can trust and say, listen, just they're setting a good example, they're saying the right things. Listen to your coach. It's incredible what you can that can take you out of the picture a lot. And sometimes youth coaches aren't very good. We've had bad youth coaches too, but I think a lot of times, like, if you can say, hey, you're playing for, I don't care if you're third grade softball, right? But your coach is saying the right things, work harder, be resilient, be tough, have fun, all the right things. Then, like, listen, just listen to your coach. That's the most important thing. Let the coach handle 80% of what goes on, and you kind of give advice on the guardrail kind of thing, right? But the concern is sometimes we have a bad youth coach, and it's no one's fault. It's just hard to find good youth coaches. But I think I've seen some great youth with my two kids. We've had some coaches and teachers who are just. And I say coaches, teachers the same way too, right? Sometimes you have a great third grade teacher, fourth grade teacher. That person can have more of an effect on your son or daughter than you can almost have, because they're with them all, every day in class and all the situations and things. And I remember my dad used to tell me all the time, like, I know your kid better than you know your kid, because I see them in every situation. After a win, after a loss, when things are going well, having to play a role. So sometimes that coach knows the kid better than the parents do. And so I think having a good youth coach, to me, can be invaluable.
Yeah.
Well, I'm dying to ask you this question, Matt, because you told me before we started recording that, that you're pretty involved with your son and his sports, and that it's really special time for you two. So how do you contrast that with Tobin's advice to be hands off?
No, I think you try to be hands off. I think when they start playing it at a more serious level, or enter into that serious level, it's like middle school into high school, like, you're hands on at that point because your child lives with you. You know what I mean? So it's built in when you really got to try to take a step back, is when they go away to college. But there's a learning curve. You're trying to help your child understand, hey, there's a wide range of coaches out there. Like my son, one of his biggest things is he has such a high expectation of coaching, because since he was 0 years old, he was listening to recruiting conversations with families and listening to phone conversations of college coaching staffs and how to navigate scouting reports. Like it's like part of his being. He comes to practice and he knows immediately. Like, he would literally, like, as an 8-year-old playing youth basketball, he would dribble the ball up the court. He would pass to the wing. He would naturally pass and cut through the other side. As an 8-year-old, I was like astonished, but that's what he was used to seeing, and he just internalized it from being around, our team, where you don't pass and stand. But you try to help your kid understand, look, like, through youth sports and middle school and high school and AAU, there's going to be a wide range of coaches, and you got to understand that the coaching may be very good in this aspect, but not good in this aspect. What is, like, for me, it's like they're mostly all pretty acceptable, and if they're not acceptable, then I'll let you know, and you'll hear about it from me. So I'm trying to help him understand that, like, all these experiences are good. You got to learn how to play for coaches that, maybe lack in this area. You got to learn how to play for, play with a team that has players that, like, it is more one-on-one, or they're not capable of doing certain things, And so for a player like your child, they got to learn how to be a role player. They got to learn how to be, the best player who can score a lot. They got to learn how to, play in all kinds of different scenarios. And so through their experiences, they're going to get these different environments, and they're all valuable. And so if you don't get all those experiences, then you're going to be lacking in some areas. So you really got to embrace the different coaches that you get and learn how to work through those trials and tribulations. You got to embrace the different teams that you play on, where your role is different, even sitting the bench and not playing. Like, you got to learn what that feels like. And so as a parent, I think you're just guiding them, so, like, I train my son but I try to be hands off, and I try to just help him understand how it's going to work. And just like I said, the guardrails on the bowling alley. Like, I'm not trying to be that involved. You know, I want him to work through things on his own. I want to give him the tools to work through things on his own. And that's the other thing, is that every kid is different. Mine has a high expectation of coaching. He also has a temper sometimes. Other kids,
Shocking. That is shocking.
other kids handle things like so well. They just roll with all the different things that occur. And so, you know, you got to understand your kid too. You know, there's a lot of moving parts.
It's funny you're talking about that, because I'm like, what? We're kind of, our kids are kind of, like Matt's kid's lucky. Eli's lucky. His dad's one of the best coaches in the country. Like, his dad's one of the best shooting coach. I mean, he has to listen to his dad. I mean, why would you listen to somebody else who can't teach shooting when go home and his father can teach him? So I think sometimes the kids got to understand, maybe like, hey, my dad knows a little bit more than most fathers know, you know? So I gotta listen to them. So we're kind of in a unique situation because we are college coaches.
That's another thing I wanted to talk to you guys about. So one of the things so let's assume now that it's a kid who's self-directed and wants it, right?
Yep.
For those kids, there's a travel component, right? So there's a money component, there's a logistics component, and then there's an expertise component, which is like what we were just talking about. And so maybe this isn't true, but like it's exaggerated, right? But like the narrative is that growing up, the best players that went the furthest, right? And now it's not the best players, it's the best players amongst the rich that go the furthest. So my question for you guys is, do you think there's an accessibility problem in terms of the players that have the natural talent, but either don't have the dollars, don't have the logistics, or don't have the guidance, right? Are they handicapped? And if so, what can we do about it to try to do our best to make sure that it is the most talented players that progress the furthest in the game?
I think that issue does exist. I think there is a trend towards just playing more convenient and local tournaments and having less I think that it's trending that way. And I think that's the best way to do it. I think, like, if you're good, coaches will find you. And I don't think kids should be traveling 3 hours each way to practice with their AAU team twice a week and then doing all this travel. I think it should be an easier scenario, an easier situation. So I think things are moving that way just because there's so many good players out there, and they can't all be concentrated at one event. Or like in the case of basketball, it's like Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour, you know, and Puma's trying to get into the mix. And so there's three to four good leagues, but there's so many good players out there that they can't all be concentrated in those 3 to 4 leagues. So there's a lot of good players everywhere, which means that I think they're going to be dispersed, and it's going to take the pressure off all that travel. And I hope it continues to go that way, because I think that'll solve some of the problem that you're talking about, because it does exist currently.
I'm laughing and you start asking that question because my niece is a really good soccer player. She should be a Division I soccer player or whatever. And so they were out in Colorado last year and playing some tournament and just got drilled like 6-0 or whatever. And my brother, who tends to say what he feels all the time, said, "Hey, I could pay $5,000 just to get our ass kicked 30 minutes away. You know, why do we need to go to Colorado and get beat 6-0? I just stay local, right?" So it's like, I do agree. Like, I feel like there's so much stuff going on. Like, you don't have to go across the country to go play. Just go play local. I do see kids who don't have a lot of money, but the people are able to find teams for them, find pathways of playing and make it happen for the most part. So I don't hear of many kids we recruit that weren't able to play AU or weren't able to, because like the reality is if you're good enough, someone's going to pay for you. If you're a really good young kid and you're in New York City and you don't have the means to go play, but if you're really good, they'll find you and they'll pay for your all the travel and all the uniforms and shoes and things like that. So I think the access has helped almost everybody have a chance. And like Matt made a great point, if you're good enough, they'll find you. I tell it to parents all the time, you don't need to go out and spend money on a recruiting service or on a travel, all that kind of stuff. If you're good enough, there's too many eyes on you. We'll find you.
One of the things I've been thinking, actually, before I go here, one last topic, and then we can close it out with just some feedback on some of the stuff I've been thinking about. But you mentioned, I think it was you, Matt, that mentioned that there's too many games and not enough development. What are your ideas in terms of how to flip that and maybe right size that to maximize long-term success?
I think Tobin is the one who said that.
Gonna blame me. I do agree with that, though. I definitely do agree with that. There's too many games on the development.
Well, if you said it, of course you agree with it.
Yeah. Well, whether he said it or I said it, didn't really. We're all on the same page. I don't know how you get that back, right? Like, at the end of the day, kids want to play. I mean, it's just they want to play, right? They want to play games. Like, everybody loves the games. Like, no one wants to go and shoot 500 jumpers. Let's go play. So I think it's going to be hard to get that back to where it was. But you see more kids who do spend more time on their development. I think it's kind of a personal choice. How many guys do you want to get in the gym and you can't say that you can't say, well, hey, we're gonna have less opportunities. You're just gonna, each kid has to make their own choice on what they want to do. And if you want to become a great shooter in basketball, you better be in the gym shooting 200, 300, 400 shots a day. There's no other substitute for that at all, right? So I'm sure the same thing's true in hockey and soccer, and you have to have certain skill levels. So, you go play 3 games in a day, you might shoot a total of 20 shots, unless you're playing with Matt, who shot all the time. You might take 35 shots, but you're not getting a lot of shots off, right? So to be a great shooter, you have to go shoot 500 shots a day. So that's kind of a personal choice on how good you want to be. But I'm not sure we're going to be able to go backwards because Matt makes a good point too. Everybody's making money, man. People are making a lot of money. These tournaments are at the end of the day, they're money makers. They're charging admission, they're charging for parents, they're charging for the teams, they're charging for college coaches. I mean, there's a lot of money being thrown around to make this happen, and that's not going away.
I do think the United, this was like 10, 15 years ago. The United States was getting exposed by the European players for not having a high enough skill level, being athletic and being able to run up and down the court, but like they were more skilled. And I kind of think that there's a better balance between, even though tournaments are offered every weekend and there's always the draw to that, I think nowadays there's definitely a better balance to skill development and working on the other things that aren't just playing tournaments. Because like I was saying, like, kids have their trainers, they have their strength and conditioning coaches, they have their skill trainers, and so kids are in the gym working on their skill levels. And then of course there are the kids that love it and they're going to get in the gym on their own, and over time, given certain physical attributes and talent, they'll win out because they love the game and they're in the gym all the time, and they don't need a trainer there to necessarily motivate them.
All right. Well, last segment is I just want some feedback on some of the stuff I'm thinking about, which dovetails nicely into all the things we've just been talking about, and then we can wrap. Is that cool? By the way, do we have time just for this?
Yeah, we're good. Sure.
Okay. I mean, a lot of similarities in hockey, right? You see all the different coaches and trainers and strength and shooting and edge work and small group stuff and mental fitness and nutrition and not like my kid 13, he does a lot of stuff, but he doesn't do most of that stuff, to be clear. But it's just like there's a lot out there. There's a lot coming at you, like Facebook ads and everything else, right? But still, to play at the more competitive levels, like you end up doing some subset of that mix of things, right? And it might evolve as you get older. And 1, it's expensive. 2, it's time consuming and requires, the parents to have logistics that make them able to cart you around all the things that you need to do. And then there's kids that don't have the dollars, don't have the logistics, or live in regions where there's just as much density. I mean, hockey relative to basketball, it's a lot smaller, right? So there's just like parts of the country, for example, where you don't have all the same resources that you have in a New England or a Minnesota or places like that. And at the same time, overgamed, underskilled, and even as the skills come up, right, under hockey IQ'd, right? It's like, because you're not watching games, you're watching Instagram clips and stuff like that. So my thought is, and I'm using this for hockey, but it could just as much apply to basketball, is some type of digital platform that could be your partner through the journey, that's centered on you, that's not centered on the team, and that's not just trying to fill a treadmill of like an hour of ice to work on this or an hour of ice to work on that. It's like, no, it's like your journey in a holistic way based on what's best for you. And by the way, best for you might be rest or might be doing other stuff, right? But just kind of helping you navigate that, right? And that might be a framework for what to work on. That might be using things like computer vision for feedback. That might be things like film review and connecting you with people that, coach the game at a really high level and do film review for D1 or the pros, but now getting access for these kids coming up that don't have it at the dinner table like UI, right? Or also how to make it fun. And a quick story from yesterday. So yesterday I'm like, I said to my kid, like, hey, Tyler, like, you want to go take some shots? He's like, well, I'll take some, but I'm tired, so how about we only shoot one bucket? So I said, okay. So we dump out the bucket, and then it's like, hey, instead of just shooting, you want to play a game. And we played post and we played horse, right? Which is similar to like horse and basketball, right? It's just different games that like make it a competition. We ended up shooting 5 buckets, and then he would have kept going, but I was the one that got tired and had to come in. Why? Because it wasn't just out there like robotic going through the motion. We made it fun. So like when his buddies are here, same thing. When he goes and you card him in person with a group of kids, same thing. But when it's just him and a bucket and the net, he doesn't want to do it. He'll do it if I nudge him, right? But like, it's why? It's fun. He's just doing it because he wants to get better, right? And so how do you make it fun at home? And could you essentially like somehow insert that competition or challenges or accountability or stuff in a digital remote way? So anyways, I'll stop there. Not a lot of specifics, but just that general category and general idea. I'm just curious your guys' initial reaction to that.
Yeah, I like it. I think it depends on who's giving the feedback, right? That's always the case. I mean, who's in charge of the feedback? I mean, everybody wants to hear from people who are experts and who.
Unless the expert is your dad, right?
Yes,
then you don't want to hear it.
That's a hard. Yeah. So who's giving the feedback? But all that stuff, like we have all this. Listen, we have all that stuff here. We have all shooting. How many shots the guy's taking, where they're taking them from, what their percentages, or they're walking the gym, everything is charted. It's all that. And like, yeah, I think a lot of that's really good. Is it too much sometimes? Probably so. Sometimes, like you said, just getting in by yourself and it's interesting because like when I was growing up, like I loved to be in the gym by myself. Almost like to the point if somebody else came in, I'd be like, I don't want anybody else to. I want to work by myself, but I was a little bit different, right? So, and then as you got older, you want to play one-on-one, want to play 2-on-2, whatever. So it just depends on who you are as a person, I mean, I registered Jason Williams, who played for the Sacramento Kings, they call white chocolate, or he was the Hall of Fame or close to Hall of Fame. They said when he worked out in the pros, he wouldn't shoot, he wouldn't do any drills. He just wanted to play one-on-one. So like to get him better, they'd have to figure out a way one-on-one to like get him to do certain things, work on certain skills. But he was like, I want to have competition. I want to play. I don't want to do these. I don't want to do these stupid ass drills. So he just come in and play one-on-one. So like it depends on who you are. But yeah, I think that like all that stuff's good, man. These are great.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea too. I would say this though. You could give one coach the coolest, funnest drill, and he administers it to his group, and the kids don't like it and they're miserable. You give that same drill to another coach, he administers it to his group, and it's awesome and they love it. So to me, it's like, it's really our who's doing it and are they good at what they do? It's like your professor. Some professors teach the same material, but some are just awesome at it and they captivate you. And some are just boring and it ain't fun. You know what I mean? And so I think it's like in how it's administered. I imagine there's a person at some level of this platform, this digital platform, and how is it administered, and is it administered in a fun way?
Well, here's one interesting thread, and I don't know if the same thing's true in the NBA, but it might be. But one of the things I've picked up just in the last few weeks is that I was talking to a longtime NHL player who left the game in the last few years, and he, one of the reasons he left the game is that he's got 2 young kids, and he doesn't want the travel grind. He wants to be there with his kids, and they bought a place an hour up north from where they live, and he loves the game, and he's seeking purpose, but he also is kind of like us. He's a little older. He wants to work on his own terms. He doesn't want anyone to tell him what to do. He wants to be able to work from anywhere, right? And he's like, if you gave me access to be able to help people digitally, right, they could benefit from like someone who's like played in the league close to 1,000 games, right? And I could benefit from purpose in serving people, serving more people more comprehensively than I could just serving, one kid at a time at the local rink. And not to take away from the local rink, right? But like you get a different kind of leverage and scale when you work digitally. So that's a thread I want to pull on is like, how do you connect people that maybe recently left the game and are seeking purpose but want more flexibility in their schedules with kids in a way that makes sense for everybody? What do you guys think? And are you seeing similar in basketball as well?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is like Peloton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've used that analogy for sure when I think about it.
I love Peloton.
Yeah, so picture Peloton, but now you've got like an IMG sports psychologist, and you've got like a world-class off-ice trainer, and you've got a shooting coach, and you've got a film review guy who's done it in the pros, and you have all these resources at your fingertips, but packaged in a way that's going to be age appropriate for serious kids coming up, and increase the accessibility so that you're also maximizing the time, how you use the expensive ice time and getting a ton of stuff done in between at home, which, by the way, may even cut down on your cost and the wear and tear logistically because you can get more quality stuff done on your own terms. That's the thought, at least.
No, I like it. It's hard in hockey, right? Because you only get you got to be on ice for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, we have a basketball hoop in our driveway,
Yeah.
right? And that, I feel like that resembles basketball a lot more closely than the street hockey net that we have for driveway.
Or you're gonna be able to skate. I mean, the skating is the most important part of being able to play hockey. I mean, I can't freaking skate. So you have to do that first and foremost. So
I think kids already, they're already like learning most of what they learn from like TikTok. Like I was talking to a recruit who he learned how to study from a TikTok video that taught him how to like make cahoots on his phone for the material that he was studying. I don't remember exactly, but I know my son learns half of what he learned, what he knows. Like my son likes to cook, and he learns all his recipes and all his cooking techniques off TikTok.
Matt, what's your TikTok page?
I'm a guest. I go in as a guest.
I've done 3 TikToks.
Well, guys, I know I'm probably past my quota here on time, but
Awesome.
anything I didn't ask that you wish I did? Same question for either of you. And then the second question, and hopefully you can handle two at once here, is just what advice do you have for any crazy sports parents out there that are tuning in, listening to the show, trying to figure out how to navigate the journey with their kids?
I mean, I can say this, man. Matt's like our kids are both the same age or whatever, man. It's like, and just enjoy it, right? Like it's like I miss my son's cross country meets like crazy. Like I loved going to those meets. Like I'd be so nervous. Like almost felt like a game day for me. And to go watch his meets and I was so excited. And like when he did well, I'd be so happy. And I'd be stressed out and just like I love watching him run and to see him happy, to see your son or daughter having fun and enjoying what they're doing, man. That's the whole thing, And I think for me, like, because I coached him in AU basketball when he was younger, sometimes after games wanting to please me and like wanted my approval, and like in cross country, him knowing that I didn't really know what the hell I was talking about, but I just enjoyed watching him run. Like he could tell it was sincere. So I think for any parent, like, man, like you're gonna miss. I miss already the times taking him to practice, picking him up, going to the meets, like all that kind of stuff. Like I miss that like crazy. So just enjoy the time you have doing it, and that's a special time in your life. And I think anytime you see progress, it's like, we're coaches, so we see progress. I think one of the most valuable players as a coach is when you see a player get better or you see improvement, right? And when you're with your kid, like, they may not be Division I players, they may not be major college, they may not be superstars, but if you can just see them get better and improve, that's what it's all about. And I think Matt made an unbelievable point too. Like, it's a vehicle for. I learned so much from basketball from shit that didn't go well. When it was like, oh, man, I went to prep school and I thought I was going to go play Division I, and I was a 15th man on a 14-man roster. Everybody else going to Division I. I was the last guy on the bench. That helped me so much when I got to college being like, hey, I can take any role or understand any situation and help the rest of your life. You're just more resilient, you learn to handle all situations. And like Matt said, you got to be able, I think he made another good point was like learning to play for coaches and people who aren't maybe as good as you'd like them to be, and being able to deal with those kind of situations. So, but I think you got to enjoy it, man. It goes by fast. My son's a sophomore. He's actually working the Alabama basketball camp right now. He's a coach at the end. So people are paying money to go to the Alabama basketball camp and think they're going to get coached by Nate Oates, and it's my son's actually doing the coaching. I'm like, that's not a great, but he's down there doing that, and it's I'm really proud of him for that. He's kind of going in that direction. But it's like, yeah, man, I miss the days of him just running cross country.
Matt, any advice, parting words?
Yeah, I mean, similar messages, and it's somewhat contradictory, but bear with me. It's just like, don't be afraid of your kid, having failure, because those are the biggest motivators. They're the biggest driving tools to get better. And if there's failure and they don't recover from it, it wasn't meant to be. If there's failure and they pick themselves up and then they start to work harder, then you have something. But always be positive with your kid. That's going to instill confidence in them. That's going to give them the right role modeling. You're trying to model behavior for your kid. Like, be positive with your kid. Instill confidence in them. Tell them how good they were. If they didn't play that great, still, when they come out of the game or you're in the car driving home, just like tell them how good they were. And I just think that's going to go a long way. Even with our team, Coach Jones does such a good job of instilling our players with confidence that when we go out and play teams that are better than us, we think we're Superman out there. And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned is, regardless of whether I think we're that good, we should be telling our guys that we're awesome and we are that good, because then it just instills confidence and they can go out there and play with confidence and just probably play better than their level. So just be positive. Be positive with your kids. Tell them how good they played, regardless of how well they played.
Guys, I can't thank you enough for making the time. It was really special to get to catch up with you. I learned a lot. And if and when we ever go into basketball with this digital platform, expect some phone calls.
That sounds good, bro.
Awesome. Thanks,
Great
Jay.
stuff, man. That was awesome. That was great stuff.